University of South Florida, and I have a project today that is entitled Multimedia Composition as Creative Problem Solving, Investigating Mediating Tactics. First I'd like you to look over this transcript of some things that some people were saying when they were making the film, and see if there's any language in there that you recognize from professional discourse of filmmaking. So I've kind of cheated a little as I highlighted all of the things that dealt with the discourse of filmmaking in italics. So John says, I'd like it to be a low-angle shot. Alex says that we planned on the storyboard. John says, no, but I think low angle makes you look more cool and powerful. Like the hero, you know how in a movie you see the hero come in larger than life. And Mason said, yeah, that's what it's called for. And John says foreshadowing. And Alex says you start with a low-angle shot and then a close-up of me on the phone. So these, and George says, oh yeah, like in the script. Can we see the script? So we're going to look at the script. And yeah, here it is in the actions. We wrote, you answer your cell phone looking cool, but then in the dialogue you say, talk to me. So the kids are, what the kids are doing in this scene is they're trying to film a scene, and they're looking at their script and their storyboard that they had written before, and they were middle school students. And at this point of time, there was a reporter who was standing beside me with a professional camera, and he looked at me and he said, did you hear what those kids were saying? And I said, yes. And he said, those kids are after my job. I know it. And he said, they sound like professional filmmakers. They really know what they're talking about, don't they? And I said, yes, they do. And that made me think, I really have to investigate how these kids are in this filmmaking camp and learn how to use this discourse. Because they're not just using it because the teacher says, here's a vocabulary word, and can you define it? They're actually using it in the process of creating their films. So they learn it and use it. And I was very interested in seeing what the heck did they do. And then what happened was this summer, I was looking at the newspaper while I was filming, collecting some of my data, and I saw this, this announcement in the newspaper as an ad for a job. So they need a multimedia photojournalist, which is a person who's able to provide timely multimedia coverage of breaking news and other assignments. They must have the ability to develop, shoot, and edit timely news packages. The multimedia photojournalist provides content for online, print, and broadcast in a timely manner regardless of the assignment location. That sounds like about 50 jobs of the past that some people are saying is a job of the future, but this summer, guess what? It was the job of today. And I noticed that every student that was in our filmmaking camp may be able to do that job in the future, but not a lot of people could do that job in the future based on what is always happening in school. When I was looking at literature and theories that I reviewed. I come from the theory of pedagogy of multiliteracies. I'm very interested in how different literacies come together, including traditional literacies and language and multimedia literacies. I'm very interested in discourse communities because I'm interested in an apprenticeship model of teaching where learning is scaffolded and students work within authentic communities where they speak the language of the subject area. And that also includes disciplinary literacy, the literacy of the disciplines. And in this case, with filmmaking, to disciplinary literacy, you add moving image literacy, which includes things like shots and angles and why you would use them, and other discourse of filmmaking, like documentary and mockumentary. And I was, when I looked at my data, I was using the perspective of mediated learning because I was very interested in seeing two aspects of mediated learning. First of all, I was interested in seeing what it was that the teachers did that helped mediate the students' learning during the learning time, and then looking at what helped the students mediate the text when they used that learning in the filmmaking camp. Now I'll talk a little bit about the camp, so you'll know where we are. Okay. so I basically talked about those questions. So this is a camp that was, it's a joint project between the university's Florida Center for Instructional Technology, and there's one of our key people, James Welsh, who actually is in charge of the camp. And it's a joint project with an historic theater downtown, and which apparently is haunted, but I couldn't put that in my dissertation because that would seem really crazy.
Have you seen ghosts?
Pardon me?
Have you seen ghosts?
No, I haven't seen ghosts. Well, I've seen lots of them in movies, my goodness. The magic of film. So the students come into this lovely magical world, and the camp began in 2004. And it's been continuing every year, and I'm addicted to my yearly summer ethnography, and I've been there for 4 summers because I just can't give up going there and discovering more. So let me bring you into where the main teaching area is. And this is the main teaching area. Every summer, it's an instructional space for film and animation camp for students from the ages of 8 through 17, and they're in 3 age categories. And the camp meets for 8 sessions of 1 week of half days for students, and they learn how to make movies. The participants, every summer there's approximately 120 students from 8 through 16 or 17 years of age. Majority is usually male, about 60 to 40 males to females. The counselors are all paid educators trained by the University of South Florida's College of Education program. And this summer, they started a new program with assistant counselors, which were students that had been to camp for a number of years, and they came back to be assistant counselors to help the counselors. And that worked out very well. It was very interesting. I did 3 levels of analysis in this paper because where I started first was at the end. I was starting with student interviews, and because I wanted to see from the student interviews, could they use the language of filmmaking when they were talking to me in their interviews, their director's interviews after they made the movies. And so I created a youth voice portrait of what these students learned, and then they also told me what they thought it was that the teachers were doing that helped them to learn, or what helped them learning in camp. So I started from the end with interviews and with the kids. Then I went into the mediation during the learning process. So now that the kids told me things that they thought were happening, I went back to the beginning when the instruction was going on and the kids were learning the discourse and all of the terminology they needed to learn, and I gathered quite a bit of photo ethnography, videotapes of process, directors' interviews, artifacts, researcher notes. So I had quite a bit of data because I was using ethnographic methods. And level 3 analysis was then I went on, as after the students have the learning part, they go into small groups with a counselor and they create their own movies. And during that time, I wanted to see then, so the students learned all of these methods, all of this vocabulary. Now, how did they take the vocabulary and use it in action to actually make the text move and actually make things happen in their and use it in action? So, this is how I transcribed my video into a screenplay screenwriting software program, and I'd love to talk to you about it, but I don't have the time because I have 3 levels of analysis. So I'm going to move on. If you're interested, I can talk to you later. What I did was I was very interested in mediation, and teacher mediation, and student mediation. So. And the camp was based on a Vygotskian apprenticeship learning model, and their learning was scaffolded very well. And I was looking at how teachers mediated learning, and I used some of cultural historical activity theory. I've started with cultural historical activity theory, asking questions because I was very interested in the developmental transfer and expansive learning. How did the learning transfer from the instructors into the students, and how did it expand across both activities? How did it go from here to here? What were the shared things? And I had the questions I asked at every stage of my data analysis, like who's learning, how are they defined, why do they learn, what do they learn, like historical things that were coming in and what they brought socioculturally, how they interacted, and how do they learn. And I was really specifically interested in what was this key mediating action and how were they scaffolding the learning that really made the kids do something special. So my results for level 1 were that the kids had said, you know, we get it. We get it because we do it, and we get it because the teachers help us. Basically, they said, we really get what we're doing here. That's why we're using the language, because we get to do learning. We don't get to do learning at school. I mean, this isn't new. Kids say this, you know. And then they say, but the teachers always help us. The teachers help us when we need help, and they don't help us when we don't want help. So, but the teachers were always there on the sidelines to help them. So, level 2 analysis, where I was interested in the ways in which the disciplinary vocabulary and moving image literacy were taught during camp. So I looked at all the phases of camp, and I probably am going to go through them a little quickly, but I'll try to elaborate just a little bit on each phase where I really thought that the learning was coming in a little bit differently. So level 2 analysis was who, what, when, or who, why, what, and how. For disciplinary vocabulary and moving image literacy, the students were invited before camp, when they signed up, to go and watch the movies from previous years and to download some of the materials for camp that they were going to be using. So some of the students chose to do that. Then, as soon as the students came in, mediation came through instruction. As soon as they were introduced to camp, the camp director, who you may recognize in that picture there, in this room, used discussion, presentation notes, and examples where the language of moving image literacy was constantly used throughout the presentations. So that's the beginning. So they could or could not, or if they chose to, the vocabulary before, then the vocabulary starts to be used. And then they start to split up into small groups to do small group work. And in one of the small groups, they learned how to scout for a location. And during the location scouting, the leader would use the disciplinary vocabulary, like real filmmakers, to conduct a location scout. So she would say, you know, when I actually had filmmakers here, they were looking at this building, and they thought that this staircase could be used as a staircase in an old home. Oh, yeah. When children were here before in camp, they looked at this gate and they thought it could be used as a jail, as a prison cell. Oh, yeah. So the kids then they were investigating these things. They were thinking about these things, and then she would ask them, for example, what could you use this balcony for? And so the kids started doing some problem solving. It was always about how to use this how to use the filmmaking language to actually do something. As this went on, I saw this happen quite often. For example, in the popcorn break, which came right after their tour, they viewed movies. And when they viewed the movies, they discussed how it's done. The person who was in charge of showing the movies would stop a movie at a key point and say, how do you think they did this? Do you think that man really jumped off of a 30-story building and landed flat on the ground and died? And of course the kids were like, no. And so they then would look at what kind of tricks do you think that the director would have used? And so they looked at different shots and saw how movie magic was made. So that's when they started always giving this whole problem solving and question finding. That was kind of the discourse that always seemed to be going on. So then it came to solving the problem of how to convey meaning through shots and angles. Well, we have shots and angles. How do you convey meaning through these? How do you convey meaning through lighting? How do you manipulate the camera for meaning using the discourse of filmmaking? How do you solve the problem to shoot the right shot and have good sound? These were things that the kids were constantly solving as they were in the learning phase. Solving the problem of enhancing meaning through effects. So when you have a computer and you're using special effects, how do you solve meaning if you bring that back into your text? If you have a script and you're looking at how you filmed it and you're thinking that definitely doesn't look scary enough, you can use special effects or music to enhance the scariness of the piece, or the funny quality of the piece, the comedy of the piece, or whatever it is that you want to enhance. And they learned how to do that. So that brought me into another theme, is now these are all like media technologies and filmmaking, but they also integrated traditional literacies. They learned how to, a story structure, beginning, middle, end, like a Freytag triangle. They learned how to create a script digitally using Caltex, and it was all about meaning making. How do you solve that problem of having the audience know what you're trying to say? Storyboarding, where they drew pictures to choose shots and angles to make meaning, and dialogue, how to make meaning, act how to make meaning, and read scripts to make meaning. So it was all about how is the audience going to understand us making this meaning, and how